for having me. I go by JClay. My real name is Jelani Clay, so JClay is the fusion of that. I make positive, spiritual, peaceful music with the purpose of healing the listener. So the idea is that conflicting thoughts, I speak to the conflicting thoughts that many people have. And the idea is the conflicting thoughts you have within lead to your circumstances without, in a sense, in the world. And by healing those conflicting thoughts, you can enjoy peace, love, joy, everything you ever wanted to do. And yeah, I enjoy doing it. One of the one of the things that kind of brought me to this were two things. One was a spiritual awakening, and two was just a quote that kind of sparked my something that just sparked my intelligence, I guess, my wisdom nugget that I like exploring, um, which is watch your thoughts for they become your words. Watch your words for they become your actions. Watch your actions for they become your habit. Watch your habit for it becomes your character. Watch your character for it becomes your destiny. And the interesting thing about that quote was you can only really control three of those things, which are your thoughts, words, and actions. The other three, your character, destiny, and habits, are all effects of the cause that you place on them. And when I thought about that, I was like, can my thoughts really determine my destiny? That seems like a big claim, but I started to trace it backwards just to see. And I love to use, for example, like I said, basketball players. You can clearly see that they're destined to be an athlete. You could just see it in them. That they might be tall or they might be physically fit, wear gym clothes in a sense. And as you continue to go backwards, you would see that, oh yeah, that is their character. They do have the habits of doing the things that athletes do. They do speak about it. They do think about it. They act on it every chance they get. And I started looking at my life and where I am and seeing how my thoughts and words played into that. And for a while, I didn't even want to speak. And I know that sounds strange, but I wanted to see what I wanted to say. Like I was watching my thoughts, trying to see could I be causing more dis-ease or more discomfort or more separation from the ones I loved or just from any circumstances that I loved than I thought. And it made me rethink things. And then the second piece was a sort of a spiritual awakening. Like I came across a book called A Course in Miracles, which again it plays to the wisdom. Like it it's like the best line in a song ever, but every line in that book is like that to me. And I knew that it was the truth that I sought, and I wanted to bring that to people because teaching and learning are one. And and I'll explain that. That's something that I didn't know before. Like in order to teach something, you would have to have learned it well enough to teach it. And in order to learn something, you have to know it well enough to you have to have learned it well enough to actually teach it. So it's like the teaching and learning are one and the same. You can't get it, you can't escape it. And so I wanted to learn how to have more peace. I wanted to learn how to have more love and joy, even though I did embody these things, but why not take it to the next level? And so I started to say, well, I make music. I love making music. It's great music. Can I infuse this wisdom into teaching others this through music in such a way that is not corny, in such a way that is well received, and that others will enjoy it and they can quickly understand it. And not only that, music has properties where they can just the lyrics and melodies can replay in your mind all day. So it's like why not have these positive thoughts influencing you in all of your moments? And so that's kind of the basis of how everything happened. And I'll say one thing real quick about the quote of watch your thoughts, actions, words, habits, character, destiny. They are all influenced by your beliefs. And beliefs are a tricky thing to change because beliefs are not, I don't want to say that they're not true. They're neither true or false. They just are. And so it's a matter of giving those beliefs an attention. And I'll give an example. If you believe that snakes are bad and you come across a room full of snakes, you might act by running. Like that might be your action that you take. Or if you think that snakes are good and you come across a room full of snakes, like your thoughts and actions are in accordance of love, like, oh, look at these beautiful creatures. And so again, like it's not so much that your thoughts, words, and actions have to really be in accordance with anything except what you would like to be your truth, what you would like to live, what you would like to embody. And that's what I love to give to people, is that choice. So you can still choose the things that maybe cause, again, separation or dis-ease or discomfort or non-harmony with others if you want to, but once you recognize your place in it, you would want to choose again. And even in that, like I had songs that had the old ego mindset thinking in them that I just had to delete because I didn't want to put them out there. Because by me putting those songs out there, it's more of this in the world of what I don't want. And I don't want that. I want what I want. And so like you can say that it's funny that you can actually say that it's selfish, me wanting love and harmony with all, but at the same time, it's not. So that's the basis of where I'm coming from with music.
Thank you. I love that. And the quote, I just wonder, because we want to make this interactive, so you can talk to JClay. Oh, there's some love from Craig. Love it. But yeah, making it interactive. The quote that JClay shared, I wonder how that resonates with different people. If you wanted to actually just jump in and we can put the quote somewhere, like in the chat. But yeah, please, if you want to speak to that quote and how it impacts you, so that JClay can have a feel for your perspective.
Yeah, so I agree with it. And I have an uncle who's been reciting that to me since I was a boy. And if I'm not mistaken, isn't that it's Rudyard Kipling, or there's a poet that's attributed to. I'll jump online and find it while the discussion progresses, but I absolutely agree with it. And, Jelani, when you were talking about, I hope I said your name correctly, Jelani, when you were talking about our potentials in life, the athlete who reaches the pro level, we know that the difference between they just being on the playground or they being in the league is in the mind. The mind and the attitude and the belief is the edge. And that goes into every aspect of life, right? Our potentials. But then what's really daunting about it, when you talk about belief, is that our beliefs are not largely our own. Our beliefs are what's given to us early in life by family, society, various other, people and institutions, and our lack of awareness of those beliefs, because they go deep inside of us, becomes a lot of the root of what we do or don't get done in life, and who we are or are not. And so I'm interested, as we proceed now, to hear about how music and digital technology, as you see it, impacts that for us. And I'll stop right there.
And just hold off, Craig, about technology. I just want to get other people's views on this quote, if they wanted to share parts of the quote that resonated, or and we will get the quote up there, and we can jump back to that as well. So okay, good stuff. So the one thing I wanted to because Claudia is with us, and I was speaking with her previously about imagination, and I wonder, Claudia, if you could just speak a little bit about imagination, and then JClay, I'd love to hear what you think about what she's talking about with the default mode network, and just imagination as a academic work that you've done.
Thank you. Nice to see some familiar faces from the last hour, so I'm not talking to total strangers. The more user-friendly version of what I did my PhD on was really what happens in a writer's head before the writing begins, and what happens in the writer's head while the writing is happening. That's the kind of the questions I kept in my head when I went down all the rabbit hole of the academic research. I'm not a neuroscientist, but I did find an amazing amount of stuff in neuroscience. So then I had to bring two things together. One was all the many anecdotes from writers about how they came to write a particular book, or how they write, all personal accounts of their processes. Then but they speak almost themes running right through of moments of inspiration, of intuition, of incubation, of imagination. And when I went to have a look at these things in the field of creativity research, I was totally astonished to find out that for decades, creativity researchers had managed to talk about creativity without mentioning the imagination once, ever. So of course that then became, I mean, I was now coming up with more research questions than I had a lifetime to answer. So I'm just going to cut to the short version. It started when I found many writers referencing the subconscious or the unconscious. I thought, okay, well, we need to find a definition of that. No definition. So then, hence, I eventually found my way into neuroscience, and then I got super excited. So since about 2010, because of all the new technology and the ways that now they can now measure brain activity, not just the physical structure of the brain, but how it works, is that the brain works by creating neural pathways. I'm sure you're familiar with this. But then interesting, as researchers began to look at this, so initially they mapped, so if you think of like photographs of traffic moving at night, you know, you just see the streams of red and yellow lights mapping how the traffic works. That's the kind of pictures they were coming up with. And so initially they would give participants in the laboratory specific tasks to do, and they get very excited because they could see specific areas of the brain lighting up, and almost as if a little car was traveling all the way around it. And then there was this Swedish researcher who went, and then there were just times where there's nothing happening. And everybody said, oh, well, that's the resting brain. The brain's not needing to be active, so nothing's happening. And a Swedish researcher and her team thought, well, let's go and have a look at this resting brain. So they put all the electrodes on, and they told participants, just don't think of anything and don't do anything. I mean, I'm obviously not doing justice to their research. It was intense and so on. But anyway, what they found is what had been thought of as the resting brain was in fact an incredibly busy brain. That was the first thing. And then secondly, what they discovered is that any time a person doesn't have to focus on a task, the brain goes back into this random busy mode, which they then called default mode. And they found then there were two distinct or key networks operating the brain. There's 9 altogether, but 2 main drivers. One is the dorsal attention network, which is any time, like now, you're paying attention, hopefully, to what I'm saying. So your dorsal attention network is being engaged. You're taking information, you're matching it up with what you already know. You're, oh, that's interesting, etc. But then they discovered with the default mode network happened whenever the mind didn't have to focus or concentrate on anything. And it was very inwardly focused. So we think about daydreaming. That's an example of default network where you're daydreaming. When I'm trying to solve a mathematical equation, or in my case, how to read a recipe, which is an equally tough challenge for me, it's the dorsal attention network. And these networks don't operate at the same time. They get activated depending on where the attention needs to be, internal or external. And they will switch between the others within milliseconds. So the fact that scientists have actually been able to say, oh, we can see these 2 different networks and work out what makes each one unique. So that was the first thing. And then I began to go into what the research was saying about the default network, and I got even more and more excited. So the default network, the material, the raw material that the default network plays around with is everything that you have experienced through your senses from the time you were born. What you've seen, heard, touched, felt, even the emotional mood of the moment. Whether you're aware of it or not, it's all going into the brain. But the default network doesn't work in words or numbers, it works in senses. And that for me was the first wonderful key thing, because then I understood when the writer said, I wrote this book. I mean, so many writers said my story started because I had this compelling image. And I don't know if many of you are familiar with Maggie O'Farrell's work, Instructions for a Heat Wave. She won a prize for it, I think. She was actually busy working on another novel. And each time she sat to write, she'd have this image of this family in a kitchen on an incredibly hot day having a fierce argument. And she go, okay, well, that's fine. I'll think about that later. And she's trying to carry on writing. Eventually, this image became so intrusive that she put aside the novel that she was writing. And she thought, okay, family, you've got my attention. Now let's see what it is that you're wanting to say to me. And as she starts sitting with this idea, letting the characters unfold, she ends up writing this book, Instructions for Heat Wave, which then became the Booker Prize winner. Many, many authors have spoken about that. So I began to find the default network offering an explanation for so much of what the writers were talking about. So there's the moment of these wordless inchoate images or sensations. There's also, they spoke, so that, okay, now I step back to the two different networks.
And Claudia, sorry
Yes.
to interrupt you. Maybe we can divide it in sections for JClay, because he's not a neuroscientist and it might be piling on his shoulders a bit.
No, I just want to stop there, but I want to bring it back to say the easiest way to understand what I'm talking about when I'm saying the default network is the term that is used to say our experience of this activity, and that's imagination.
Oh, thank you, Claudia. I appreciate that, because you went deep there.
Glad to see Craig nodding madly, because
you went deep.
I'm not a neuroscientist, so I was quite nervous about this. Anyway, so that's the imagination. It has its own agenda, it does its own thing, and it's responsible for all the wonderful ideas that we get and how we decide to follow them.
Thank you, Claudia. So, yeah, JClay, do you want to jump in? And can I just say before, we might be scanning JClay's brain, so we'll find out and get some answers for you. So, but JClay.
I think it's one and the same, like the answer to Craig's question and what Claudia brought up about imagination. So the thing is with beliefs, right? Again, beliefs aren't necessarily tangible things. They can change. We change beliefs all the time. And even to go a little deep within ourselves, that was a question I always wondered, like, are we our beliefs? But our beliefs change, so we can't really be our beliefs because we're still here. Are we our thoughts? Our thoughts change, our emotions change. What are we really? Like those are the kind of things that I think about. And our imagination allows us to kind of tap into what we think we are in this particular moment, but we are still the director of our imagination. So we can direct it to certain ends if we want to, if we allow it to. And so if what we think or what we believe determines our destiny, and we would like to shape our own destiny, we need a way of changing those beliefs, those core beliefs. But again, like a lot of us really believe that we are our beliefs. So if someone offers us an alternative, which will destroy our world almost, because if our beliefs are destroyed and we think we are our beliefs, they are essentially attacking our well-being, our world. We get angry, we get mad, we get scared, we get afraid. And I'll come to you in 1 second, Claudia. And so the thing about where music can take a play into is it allows you to tap into three things that people normally use to change their beliefs or to calm their mindset, which are meditation, visualization, which uses imagination, and affirmation, where you get to practice and affirm it, or like get in the habit or practice of saying these new beliefs that you want. And so the beauty of music is, one, music by itself can put you in a meditative state. Like you can kind of relax, you can feel good. It just takes you where your brain could go to that default mode. You're not bombarded with all the thoughts and things you have to do and your to-do list and everything. It puts you in that mood. But then if it has lyrics, those lyrics are almost, it directs your brain to certain thoughts. It's like you're setting an intention, you're giving yourself an intention by what these lyrics are saying, and it's directing you. So in a sense, it's visualization. You get to visualize what the artist is saying. And then last, if you agree with it, if you enjoy it and you know it enough, you can affirm, you can have those affirmations where you're saying, this is, you can say the words and it becomes part of who you are. Now, the problem with this is if the lyrics are lyrics that aren't in harmony with the life that you want to live, you can start having conflicting thoughts. And again, with conflicting thoughts, you become the embodiment of conflict. And you may wonder, like, why am I not at ease? Why am I not happy? It's all of these things coming into play at once, just from where you allow your imagination to go.
Thanks, JClay. We've got a hand up from Amanda.
Can I just quickly, and I just mean quickly, speak to the point that Claire's, because the way that to connect for me, because I'm a storyteller, I've done quite a lot of research into the fact as human beings, we are the only animal that tells stories. We tell stories to each other, but more importantly, we tell stories to ourselves. And we are made up of the stories other people have told us about ourselves, or we've overheard other people talking about. We are a product of all the stories that we learned and engaged with when we were children, before we were able to filter out. So fairy tales, myths and legends, etc. And then we begin weaving a story about ourselves, about who we are and our place in the world. And that, for me, that's where I'm just getting so excited as Clay's talking, because when you start believing things about yourself, it's very difficult to act differently to what you believe about yourself, about the story that you're telling yourself. But when you get to change the story, you can do different things. And what I heard Clay was saying is, I began to change my story. I realized different things. I began to tell a different story to myself. And so that for me is the imagination. Advertisers know this. If you want to grab people's imaginations, you tell them a story. Stories are incredibly powerful. And that for me is where what I was saying about imagination and where Jay's coming from about the beliefs, which is critically important, where those two link. It's the power of story. And whether that story is told in words or music or in paint or sculpture, it's the stories that move us. It's the stories that make those mental shifts possible. Okay, I'm done.
Claudia, oh, I love you. I love you. Just Amanda, thank you for your patience. I just want to give Jake a chance in case he wants to respond to that kind of briefly,
Yes,
and then straight to Amanda.
Okay. Yes, I agree. Like, our stories do shape our ideas. It shapes our minds, which is important to know that we have a choice whether to dial into that story or not, which we don't, we don't grow up knowing. We just think, whatever we learn from the people that we deemed authority figures or teachers to us, we just accepted it as truth. When in reality, they were just telling a story based on their idea of how they experience certain things. Which is key too, because sometimes we could be living according to a 7-year-old's belief, because we believed a certain thing at 7 years old and we never checked in with ourselves to see, does this belief even hold any truth, and we live on. So it is important to get to the root of the story and see, is it even worth believing?
Thanks, JClay. Amanda?
Well, now I want to say that I'm super excited about the conversation that just jumped up. I'm also I'm a writer and a mental health clinician, and working with a narrative lens when I work with my clients. So we talk a lot about the stories that you're not aware you're telling yourself about yourself. It's all very exciting. I think I need to look at Claudia's work in this area. The thing I've been thinking about, going all the way back to the quote that was opened with, is that the first line of this quote is to watch your thoughts. And I'm thinking about the difference between watching your thoughts and controlling your thoughts. And in this conversation around thoughts and beliefs and the way that we consider them, and even the imagination. Do we have a harness on the imagination, or does the imagination have sort of like a life of its own? I'm wondering, JClay, if you want to speak to your experience of when things are active and passive. In meditation, are we watching what's happening? Are we controlling what's happening? And I'm feeling the tension between, like, I want this kind of life. I want this kind of story. I want to be this kind of person. And also, I can't help but be influenced by all of the experiences that happen to me that aren't part of my control. And then I'm also, this is my last note, thinking about the way in which music so often affects us in this totally outside of, I'm not sitting here, well, maybe I am, but like waiting to be influenced. The music hits me, it comes into me, and then I just feel. And it's not because I like have switched some levers so that's possible. So I'm thinking about the reactivity that happens in this conversation.
Yeah, I love that question. So let's speak on meditation first. The beautiful thing about meditation, and I'll speak on my experience with it, is no two meditations are the same. Like sometimes because your mind may be at a different place on a different day, and it may take you some more time to settle than other days. And sometimes in that settling, you might be hit with inspiration and you might want to go act right away. Like all these thoughts to perceived problems that you had may come to you, but also you might start visualizing certain scenarios that happened or how you would want them to happen. So in some ways you step into visualization, but other times you might be gifted a spiritual image that you have no idea where this came from, what this means, but it has a reasoning behind it. And the role I believe of meditation is it's a practice of just calming your mind, because when you're in a calm mind, you can make better decisions, or even no decision at all, where you just observe and you see how everything is playing out and how it doesn't need your constant attention. And what's beautiful about it is it does lead to a higher awareness, where you can now control your imagination, where you now see in the moment the potential mistake. I wouldn't say mistakes, but the potential to repeat old patterns. And so I like to say to people all the time, if you're in a situation where you always repeat the same pattern, but in this particular one, you paused for a second before choosing the same pattern, that's progress, because you paused. Before, you had no awareness that you were even doing it. You just fell into the hypnotic rhythm, so to speak. And by now taking a pause, you see, oh, I can decide where I want to go, how I want to react, if I want to react at all. And it's a new playing field. It does take practice. In some areas, you'll get it faster than other areas. Some you're like, why did I still do that? Why do I keep doing that? But it's a fun experience once you kind of break the veil to see what's possible.
It's amazing. Yeah, people keep jumping in, but it makes me think about filter and what you decide to give out to the world, and having that moment to pause to think, what do I want to say? How do I want to do that? But if you could talk about that more, because it relates to what you were just saying about your filter. How did you develop this? This is good. It's tricky, but it's
Yeah, the filter is it's like when I said, when I came across that quote, I stopped speaking for a while, like because I wanted to see what I was sharing to others. For instance, someone may say, hey, I'm gonna do this. And my response could have been, oh, you can't do that. That's not possible. Like, why am I delivering a curse on this person in a sense? Like, why not just listen and say, maybe I don't even have enough information to judge whether they can do it or not. But the thing is, what you put out is what you also receive. So by me trying to limit them, I'm limiting myself in what I think is possible. So it was, so once I understood that, it was very important to me to really filter everything. Even like diet is a hot button subject for many people. If you were to look up, let's say, eggs, you can find a lot of information of how nutritious eggs are for you, but you can also find an equal amount of information of how bad eggs are for you. So it's kind of your belief system and the belief system that you want to live under, in a sense. And by noticing again, like that, eggs may be right for that person, but it might not be right for me. And accepting that that's all right. We don't have to agree on everything. Is you're kind of mending all of this. I call it like split mind. Like you're all this tension, you're dissolving it by just letting things be. And again, it all comes from your filter. Your like we believe that we're qualified enough to judge everything, but we don't. Like we can't. In order to judge something accurately, we would have to know everything about the situation, past, present, and future. We can't. Not we don't even know it about our own lives. So sometimes we'll judge against ourselves, thinking we know better when again we can't. So that's why again I love meditation, because it allows you to tap into that higher mind that may have a higher vantage point to then help you make better decisions or judgments.
Love that. Now, I'm just aware of time as well. So one of the questions that I'm sure a lot of people are interested in this room is, how do you, as an artist, as a human, navigate the digital landscape? So if you could just walk us through being an artist, benefits, challenges.
Yeah. Well, when I love digital, like I went to school for computer science. But again, that was a limited belief because I didn't think at the time music could sustain me. But in that realm, I love everything digital. Like I even love AI, and I know that AI is it's an iffy subject at times. But it can really help you with getting ideas out or doing the things that you as an artist might not want to do, like coming up with descriptions for my song. Um, I I'm too biased. You know what I mean? Like that's a tough thing for me to do. So I'll feed it into AI and say, "Hey, you're a great music writer. Write like you're an editor of a top music magazine. Here are the lyrics. Here are here's the type of song. Here is who it's like. Things like that." And it can make a description and just certain things like that. But yeah, I love anything digital. I'm organized. I have a workflow system of song from inception to completion, everything imaginable. I use technology for.
That's awesome. So I'll just pause. Does anyone want to jump in, ask any questions with a focus on digital or anything like that? And if it's still, give it a second. So I'll kickstart imagination with this concept JClay and I've been talking about, this digital twin. So if we were to create a model based on your words, your lyrics, like your maybe even social media, maybe a bit of your socio-political beliefs, grabbing various types of things. Like you could have 100% JClay, you could have a 90% JClay, and so on, and feeding it with other, even artists, for example. Walk me through how you would feel about that situation, and yeah, just what are your thoughts on that?
It's a tricky thing because already we're all kind of clones of each other or clones of people who are the biggest influence in our lives. Um, like no idea may not essentially be our own idea. We just kind of regurgitate them sometimes, even when picking and choosing. So, and depending on when you got to me and made the clone, I may be a completely different person than I am right now, and so on. Like I may change beliefs, ideas, thoughts, all of these things, so that when the clone is like it would be a question of how do you get to the authenticity of that person, but that authenticity of the person changes as the landscape changes, as they change environments and everything. Like the core is them, but again, it's getting to that core without being masked by beliefs. So I do kind of like the idea, but as an artist, I don't like to make the same song twice. Meaning, I want to challenge myself in a new way. I want to do something slightly different. So, depending on the intention of what the AI was given, the prompt that the AI was given, they still might not be able to do what I could do unless they had all of this with them, in a sense.
That's super. I've just seen some stuff in the chat because I'm so focused on you, and then I've got to jump to the chat. I'll work backwards, but do you feel that you have consistently practiced the new habits and thoughts over time? I assume they become part of your routine and help overwrite the old patterns to some extent. That's nice.
Yeah, to answer that question, yes and no. It depends on where I am in relation to the thought, and if I feel like I need to practice it more. So I kind of check in with my feelings on a regular basis, and I like being a happy, joyous, peaceful person. When I'm not, red flag, something's up. What do I have to do? Let me meditate or let me go for a walk. Let me do something so I can get in this state. Because again, I've made not decisions, or I've tried to do things that I didn't want to do from the mindset of I don't want to do this, and it's the hardest thing ever. And by simply just doing something else for 5 minutes and then coming back to it, it's a breeze to do. So yeah, it just kind of where you believe you are in that scenario. it is worth practice, I would say.
That's interesting because okay, the chat is like, oh my gosh, it's just like a big pile. And I'll say something and then jump to the chat and go back and forth. But so it's really positive, a lot of what you do. And I've seen comments in your YouTube songs and stuff, and the inspiration it gives people. It's pretty awesome. So talk a bit about the power to influence people. And you're doing good, but just what if you got a comment and it was not good, or what if you did a song that gave bad vibes back to you from some fans or something? Just walk me through the kind of social media and the rabbit hole kind of space, and then I'll jump on the chat just to get more.
Yeah, that's a good question, because things like that have happened. So my intention is to make harmonious music that will help people heal. And from that standpoint, if I know that I did it justice, I know that I did it to my fullest ability. So there's never any guilt associated with what I put out from that viewpoint. So if somebody is coming to me with that, it's not necessarily a bad thing. Like and if anything, it's a teaching moment. It's like, okay, how could I have conveyed it better so that they understood? Is it merit to what they're saying? Like I take the ego out of it. It's not about them attacking me, because one of the things that I learned from A Course in Miracles is all there is love. So if it seems like there is no love, it's just a call for love or a cry for love. And that's what sometimes seemingly attack actually is. And the way I've confirmed that for myself is to try it out, is to test it out. So by meeting them where they are and sharing love or giving love, I've seen people kind of change their tune. Like, no, I didn't mean it like that. I apologize. But it wasn't from me responding to them in a way that will foster more guilt. Because again, the guilt you give is the guilt you receive. It's about the love, like meeting people with love so that you can receive it back. And it says this is a safe place to communicate. This is a safe place to bring your concerns. It's not going to be met with anything negative. So share all the negative that you want, because it's going to get transmuted here in a sense.
Okay, so we've got a ton of stuff in the chat. If anyone wants to bring that and voice it or summarize it, who've left messages, please go for it. Again, others who want to jump in.
And I know
Okay.
Craig, he had a question as well.
Yeah, so one thing I'll speak up about, and this will, a couple of things I put into the chat, is how we underestimate the degree to which words are still magic spells. In modern society, we've kind of left off this belief, though I read about it in science fiction fantasy novels all the time. Ursula Le Guin talks a lot about this, that words uttered, this is one of the reasons why in early human cultures, only the priesthood could learn to write, because of the power of words. And when stored, they become magical spells. That's still the same. And this is what Jelani is speaking about, right? That they still act as incantations that have an impact on our believing, our thinking. Well, the Lao Tzu poem that you read at the beginning, right? So that was one thing. The other thing, I had posted Viktor Frankl's saying to Jelani, speaking about the pause. He says, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. And then the question becomes, how do we leverage technology in the context of mental wellness to build more of that capacity to pause and choose, versus being swept away by all these other things, the media, powers that are trying to manipulate us and our amygdala, beliefs that were given to us as children that were intended to keep us safe, but which also become the cage to protect me. The fort that started out to protect me becomes the cage that traps my potential, right? Okay, that was it. So we covered two things in the chat, Becky.
Thanks, Craig. Thanks for that. Just one quick question, and then over to Lynn from Vancouver. Nice to see you, Canadian. So imposter syndrome, we don't have to talk about it now if it relates more to what the conversation was, but I just want to get that, plant that seed. Imposter syndrome, it really came back when I said creative care for this year's theme, and it was like the scientists fearing imposter syndrome, the artists fearing it. It's like it is just rife with people experiencing this when you're trying to bridge different things like the tech, the creative, the mental health, everything. So I'll just plant that seed for JClay, but we will go to Lynn. Yeah, please go ahead and make your comment.
Oh, hi, Becky. I realized I didn't put my hand up. I think I was clapping for Craig, but you know that this is such an encouraging session that you're holding here today. I'm so glad I got up early to participate, and thank you all very much again.
Super, thank you. So, well, yeah, JClay, do you want to speak to imposter syndrome?
Yes.
And then
It's an
Paul.
interesting thing, like those doubt thoughts, because again, like when you look at them through a real lens, they hold no merit, but in some ways we let them creep up. So, and I'll give an example with me. So the music thing, that's what I do. I do music. I believe in myself in music. I feel like I perfected it in a sense, even though there's more things to uncover. However, when it comes to maybe the marketing of it, I might second guess myself. Is this worthy to be marketed? I posted this song 3 times already. Do I still post it again? Maybe they're sick of it. But in reality, I'm just sick of it because I'm always hearing it. So it, if we don't check ourselves or check in with our true mind or our higher mind on a regular basis, these thoughts can run rampant and it can stop people from realizing their greatness. Because whether we all realize it or not, everyone is great in their own right. It's not the things that are similar that we love about people. It's the differences. It's like, oh, this person is just different. I love how they might say this word this way or do this way. Like it's their differences, and we all have a different viewpoint. And so when we can remember that we are allowed to be ourselves, which is like unlike anyone else, we can stay on top of those imposter thoughts, imposter syndrome thoughts, and just be who we are really meant to be.
And just on that note, like how do you handle views and things? Like you just release something. Are you measuring yourself? Well, obviously, I'm not saying this for you, but like people who might measure themselves and their value is linked to that. How do you feel about that? And what advice do you have to other artists that are just, it's currency in a way?
Yeah, I've been on both sides of it where views mattered and views didn't matter. And it's a lot harder when views matter. And so it comes back to your intention, like, or your goals. Like what do you want to get out of this? Are you doing it just for the views or are you doing it for the impact? And then asking yourself deeper questions. Is there a way that I can have the views and the impact? Because sometimes we may think it's either or, but we won't know unless we give our permission through the questions that we're willing to ask or the answers that we're looking to seek. So yeah, so that's the thing. I would say in those instances, start asking bigger questions. Does it have to be this way? Is it always like this? Is there another way? Can this be changed in a way? And it starts leading to just different combinations of things where you're no longer limited to just what you perceive as what is.
Thank you. That was really good, like the spectrum of thinking. Paul, you have your hand up.
Yeah, it's sparked a lot of thoughts and takes me back to my coaching days. I trained as an executive coach in 1996, and a lot of this is very familiar. And we know from people trying to make changes that sometimes thoughts can drive behavior, but also sometimes behavior drives thoughts. It works both ways. And I sort of riffed off the beliefs issue first of all and thought about self-limiting beliefs, but I also then found myself using the word expectations, which I think goes back to the previous session where expectations are critical in where people end up. If you've got kids who are all expecting to be the next Taylor Swift or the next Coldplay or whatever, then somebody's going to be disappointed. But if you've got very, very low expectations, which we often find in old industrial communities where none of the kids expect to come out of school with any qualifications, then that drives where they end up. So it's about pitching it right. And then I've kind of put a few comments in the chat there and probably ended up on the issue of habits. So there's comments there about changing habits. And I remember when I was working as a coach, there was a book or a paper came out about 21 days to change your habits. And that was hotly disputed as to whether it was possible to change your habits in 21 days, but it depended on the habit. So I used to do talks and workshops, and I used to do the cleaning your teeth habit demonstration. So if you clean your teeth with your right hand, if you start cleaning your teeth with your left hand, usually within 21 days, it feels normal with your left hand. If you go back to your right hand, it feels odd. So in some cases, it is actually possible to change a habit within 21 days, but most people find it really hard to change a habit. So that's kind of the question or the talking point I would put out there, where we're talking about changing habits. How are we helping people to change habits? By changing their environment or taking barriers away or making it easier for them. And just to mention a spectacular success that we've just had recently, we've managed to persuade the British Standards Institute to introduce a new standard for suicide prevention, which they're hoping is going to be an ISO standard. And when I went to the BSI offices in London, on the frosted glass in all the meeting rooms, it's got etched in, making excellence a habit. That's their strap line, making excellence a habit. So it's making excellence in however you define excellence, it's making it a habit. And as far as we're concerned, it's making excellence in suicide prevention a habit.
Thank you, Paul. I'm aware of time, and I want to make sure that JClay just tell us, what are the next steps for you? Plans in terms of navigating digital, not digital, just what are your plans?
My next plan, I have another album that I'm working on, that I'm excited to put out in a bigger way. Like these questions that I posed, I actually asked myself, okay, because I put out an album before, it's really great. It didn't get the numbers that I would have liked, but it's still not too late even for that. So my next step is this next album, that's continuing this conversation, continuing to point people in different directions, to lead their thoughts in places where they're more empowered to make a decision as to how they want to live their life. To continue to do more talks like this, because I enjoy this. Like this is my joy, and anytime I'm doing what I love doing, it just makes everything else easier. It makes everything else more fun, and so yeah, and I'm also open to where it goes. Like I don't try to set goes too far in the future, because I love staying in the moment, because this is the gift where all the magic happens.
I love that. It resonates. It's like sitting comfortably in the unknown in a way. So let us know when the album, when is this coming out? I'll put it on my website, when should we expect that?
Definitely. I'm thinking this. Well, actually, no. The first single, I'm thinking a November release, and then the album will be around March of next year.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll get that up on the space on the website and out to the world when you're ready. But yeah, I guess final thoughts. JClay, have you enjoyed the session? Have you taken anything away from this session?
Yeah, I took a lot away that I love that everyone resonates with this topic, because it affects us all. And if there's anything to take away from this, is just get in tune with you. Like there's no reason. You don't have to have a reason to find out what you love and what brings you peace and what brings you joy. Like that should be reason enough. And it's worth seeking that within yourself, not out here, not out there, not even from me, but just within yourself. And that's the key thing, or even the key message in my music. Like, I am not your guru, you are your guru, and tap into that.